Welcome to the Level Up Your Band podcast, episode 98. Hello, and welcome back to the Level Up Your Band podcast. My name is Gavin Patterson, and I'm here with Julian Pombo. How are you doing?
Hey. How's it going?
Not too bad. How's things with you?
Oh, well, yeah, nothing. It's changed. Everything's still the same.
Yeah.
I'm still indoors. You know, same old.
Same old. It's
Unfortunately.
yeah. We're now
Well, someday something exciting will happen.
we're now in the middle
someday.
of November. I don't know if this happened to you because we've been in perpetual state of nothingness since March.
Yeah.
When the weather started changing to kind of cold and dreary again, I feel like I'm still in March because everything has just stopped for so long. It feels like it's still spring. I'm still waiting on summer coming, even though I had a really great summer. But because nothing, there's so much change, it just feels like the start of the year again. I don't know if you have that as well, or I'm just
Yeah,
going crazy.
it feels a bit. It feels really bizarre. I feel like I've sort of been stuck in like a bizarre bubble, like time bubble, and nothing's happened.
Yeah,
I
mean,
it's
because like
I mean, obviously stuff has happened, but
yeah. But
it's weird. Like there's, sorry, Karen.
yeah, like we had early on in this year and last year, we had a full year of like weddings and tours and all this and
Recording dates
and
and
it was
whatever,
like
yeah.
building up in my head. I also had a trip to New Zealand and it was all like, this is happening, this is going to be a big year, and then it was all gone and it feels like it's still going to happen at some point and it's like it's not going to happen, and I just can't shake that. Now that it's like mirroring the weather we had in spring, it still feels like something's going to happen, but it's not. It's horrible.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Hazel, can you not? Sorry, I have a fat cat that likes to eat other cats' food. So,
Yeah,
it's great.
standard
So,
cat behavior.
yeah, I know, right? Anyway,
So
cool. So, what are we talking about today?
today we're talking about we're talking about it's
This isn't a pet podcast.
we kind of suggested we were going to talk about this last week, the end of last week's episode. So today we're going to talk about how to listen to your own music. And you're going like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean?
With your ears.
You use your left ear and your right ear in tandem. End of episode.
Wow, that sounds hard. Can't do that. You can use headphones.
Yeah, headphones, speakers.
That's enough for the bit.
Yeah, okay. So we'll crack on. So what do I mean by how to listen to your own music? So one of the many problems that may occur during the making of your own music is the problem of not being able to distance yourself from your work. It kind of happens in everything creative, is you lose your objectivity a little bit. So you're in a state of high analysis for so long, and you're expected to maintain a fresh set of ears at the same time, and that's like very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of for those of you who are big fans of cooking, you'll notice this as well. Like you start cooking something, and you're sitting on top of it for ages and ages and ages, and before like you taste it, and then sometimes you'll taste it and it's like, that tastes of nothing, because you've been sitting there smelling in all the smells, and then before long it doesn't actually smell like anything at all. So that you need to get an outsider's perspective and then go, hey, can you try this? That's why, people always go, wow, your cooking tastes amazing.
Yeah.
But you might taste your own cooking and you might go, tastes of nothing. I don't get it. I don't understand why people like it. Same idea, same thing.
Yep. I love the cooking analogy when talking about mixing, because mixing is exactly the same as cooking. It's exactly, it's taking different frequencies or ingredients, mashing them together to create a thing, or a cake, or a whatever, a meal. And you're right. If I'm like constantly like sampling bits of ingredients and listening to them over and over again, tweaking and trying to get the mix perfect, eventually it all just sounds like blah. And that's when you have to stop and come back again. And it's not till you come back, you go, whoa, that was really good, or that was really bad. So it's kind of, this episode's going to be talking about how to not destroy your own music. Essentially. So here are some things that you can do to try and judge your music objectively so that you can create the best version of your song, because that's the most important part, is trying to create the best version that your song can be, because your song is a thing already. We're assuming that you've got your song. This is the making it sound good part. So the song's already done, but you're trying to capture the best version of your song so that other people can hear it. Kind of same goes for live performance a little bit, but this is something that will exist forever, and it will be the same every single time you listen to it. So, number one, accept the fact that you are exceptionally close to the project, and do not be afraid to listen to critiques and insights from other people. Right? So like, it's just like what you said about the cooking, is like, it might be bland and you've tasted it a million times through the cooking process and you're like, oh, I'm sick of this, and your taste buds have gone flat, and then when someone else tastes it, they're like, oh, this is really good, or this is honking, you need to do this. It's an outsider's perspective can be really valuable.
Yeah, for sure. Thing to be wary of as well. You want to let people with as many different kind of perspectives listen to it as well. Even like, let's say you're in a I don't know, progressive metal band or something, right? And you're showing it to all your friends who are also in the scene. 9 times out of 10 they're going to go, oh yeah, that's great, right? Sometimes it can be a useful thing to show it to somebody who has no idea. Like, and just be like, hey, what do you think of this track and whatever? Because they will give you a totally different take on it, which can be very helpful, very useful. You know, so it can be good to branch out, kind of thing.
I like getting perspectives from people who know nothing about the music. Yes. Because that will force you to move in an area that is different. For example,
it makes it
we before last year, before lockdown and stuff, we filmed a wedding band video. Now everyone and their granny's seen wedding band videos on Facebook and YouTube. It's where 6 musicians are all, on a stage or in a studio somewhere, and they're all lined up, and they just play their instruments, and they mime to a song, and it's all glossy. And
we're not playing live,
right? They all look the same, and they all tend to go. All the agencies, anyway, tend to go for a set of videographers and photographers and people who do that. We
all have the same styles.
We made a decision to not do that, and to get videographers who have never done music ever before, but they do marketing for small businesses like hairdressers, plumbing business, small market or shop, or financial consultants, and they go in and they video, right? Because their main thing is to try and sell whatever you're selling. That's their job, is to portray your brand to a market. We don't care about looking cool. We just want it to sell. We're a wedding band. It's not really about looking good. It's about telling the client that we are good enough to play at your wedding. That's the message that we want to get across. That's why we went with these guys. And our video, as a result, looks different from any other wedding band video on the market. And
that's I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Or either you told me, and it was so long ago that I just forgot.
It was probably about a year ago. It was a year ago. It was more than a year ago, actually.
There you go. That's long enough for me to forget something.
Yeah. And that
Don't know what that
we
says
went
about me.
we went to someone who is outside completely of our niche, and their fresh perspective was enlightening and good. So they had different ideas for like filming us load in with gear, and we had footages of us in the studio and footage of us on stage and some footage of wedding crowds at one of our gigs and rehearsals, and they kind of blended it all together, and it's unlike anything else.
Genius.
Yeah, and it's more connectable to the audience, and we wouldn't have got that if we just went down the same path as everyone else and stayed in our little echo chamber.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's the one thing that's different. People are going to be totally drawn to it and go, "Oh,
Yeah,
that looks shiny. That looks weird." So, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that is cool.
So, second part's kind of part and a half of the first part. Criticism from friends and family can be valuable because it's likely that they have your best interests at heart. So their criticisms will be probably constructive because they care about where you're going to go with your project, assuming that they have your best interests at heart. Haters online, I would not listen to complete strangers or like haters because they don't have your best interests at heart. They're just trying to troll you. Yeah. Don't listen to them. People who are invested. It can be fans.
Aye, it can be. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, fans. Yeah, musicians as well. Just people that know what they're talking about. You're a random punter online by the name of like, I don't know, Sausage Slayer 69 or whatever. Just ignore them. Like, one thing that I was gonna say though is with family and friends, you should always say to them beforehand, and I do this as well. It's like, be totally honest with me. If it's crap, I want to know.
Oh yeah.
Okay, because you can kind of fall down into that trap of like, what do you think about this, Mum? Oh, sounds great, darling. Sounds fantastic. But meanwhile, in her head, she's thinking, I don't get it. It's awful. You know. So sometimes, it can be very useful to just say, "Hey, Mum, what do you honestly think about this?" You know, and then they'll go, "All right, okay, cool. I have permission to speak my unfiltered, honest opinion."
Aye.
So, which is what you want. You know.
Take on board as well. That's the second part.
At the same time, though, I feel like people our generation below us as well are far more savvy with regards to. Oh my God! There's just girls. Can you like chill the out, man? Like, what the hell? They're just galloping up and down the house. I suppose it's that time of day. You know. Sorry, my bad. It's like gallop o'clock.
Gallop. Oh, what are you doing, Julian? I forgot. Half past gallop.
Half past gallop. Anyway, what was I saying before I got rudely interrupted there? I feel like our generation below us are far more savvy about trolls and things like that. I can sniff a troll like a mile away. I can sniff a scam a mile away. I don't know if a bit of a side tangent, but like my mom's always really worried about me falling into some kind of scam thing. So occasionally, I'll give her a call and usual pleasantries, and then she'll go, "Oh, Julian, be careful! They're sending out these text scams," and I'm like, "I know, Mum. I got one. I ignored it because I know
I get them weekly.
It looks, like you just ignore them.
Yeah,
I don't know, but like I've even like explained it to them. It's like sadly, it's the people that fall for this are just older people.
Yeah, less
like
tech
people
savvy,
our generation are. Yeah. So anyway, fun little side tangent.
Yeah.
But, for sure, family and friends, really good. But just make sure that you say to them, be totally honest.
Yeah, I've had comments from family and friends that they say, "Wow, this is really, really great," or "Wow, this is really, really terrible. You should never release this. I've had both. I've been in bands where that the opinion has been, I appreciate the style, but I just don't like it. You know, all that stuff. I've had all that.
Same.
So moving on. So the idea of going to someone who outside of your own thing, that the whole recording process is kind of based around that. If you don't know anything about recording, you're not recording yourself, of course. I would always recommend, most of all, to go and record somewhere else rather than record yourself, because it is good to get that outside perspective, unless you're Jacob Collier and, well...
Yeah, if you're a genius, then please contact us. We will interview you and ask you for...
Yeah, there's some people...
all your knowledge.
There's always an exception to the rule, but the rule is get someone else to record you.
Yeah.
You get Einstein-level geniuses who can record themselves and still be amazing. But, us mere mortals have to get other people to do it for us. So, if you choose a decent recording engineer, producer, then they have a vested interest in your music. You're going to part with some money, and they presumably are decent and care about your music because they want you to be a happy customer and come back. So there's an incentive there.
I also get the studio's name out there as well. You know, if the EP does pretty well, then, you know, and the name of the studio is on the EP or the album or whatever, people will be going, oh, it was recorded there. Yeah. Cool, I might check that place out.
A CD is a business card for a studio. So their expertise and criticism should be welcomed. If you've gone to Joe's Recording and you've paid £50 for your EP, I mean, the guy might be really decent, maybe a nice guy, and he might be invested in your music, but there's less chance of that happening. If you've spent a lot of money and you've heard the guy's stuff before and you're like, wow, this studio is so great, the music that comes out of this studio is really good and it's up my alley, I'm going to take what this guy has to say seriously because I respect his opinion and his work and blah, blah, blah. That's the kind of people you want to work with. And you will probably get criticisms and things thrown at you, and don't take it personally. This kind of goes back to the ego episode. Don't ask me which number it is. Where we talk about, like, don't be afraid to leave your ego at the door and just, you know, it's a feedback thing. I know it's your baby, but yeah, it's going to help you if you can take that expertise.
It's just a good rule for life, to be honest. Always check your ego at the door.
Yeah,
always, no matter what.
Aye,
people don't like people who are egotistical.
Nah,
it's a fact.
Yeah,
but anyway.
So after your music has been recorded, and you've gone through the recording process. Through the recording process with the producer, you will sit and you'll have chats, and during the tracking of what direction your music's going to go, and they're going to suggest things, you're going to suggest things, depending on how ready you are to record. If the band is like fully rehearsed, everything's all done, they usually just come in and record the song as is. Any little like extra overdubs or cuts or things like that can happen, but it's less likely to happen in a band situation, and it's more likely to happen in a solo artist kind of situation because they've never played it with a band. We kind of covered that on the other episode. So if you've been playing this bridge that's 16 bars long and you've been playing it for 2 years, and the engineer goes, it's a bit long, there's nothing really happening there, why don't we shorten it to 8 bars? And here's why. Then that's the kind of criticism you'll get, and you should look into that, like, maybe he's right, maybe I can change it. That's the kind of things you get in studios. Or see that guitar part you're playing there, that's not quite matching up with the other guitar part. If you play, you guys play together, it's clashing, whatever. You'll get stuff like that. So once that's been ironed out and you've decided on the format of the song and everything's cool and you've recorded the whole thing and you're happy with the structure, the format, the tone, everything is recorded. You go away, unless you go to Cheapo Studio in Glasgow and they mix it then and there and just hand you the CD, in which case run and take your money with you. You should leave the building and then the guy will go, I'll let you know when I'm done. So then he sits down or she sits down and mixes and masters your song, or it gets sent off to a mixing master or somewhere else. And they will finish a first draft mix for you to listen to. Now, as far as the engineer's concerned, it's a finished mix. Kind of, most of the time. There's sometimes it isn't. So little I'm admitting a little secret. Sometimes the mix isn't finished. So if I'm really, really loving the mix and I'm really enjoying the song and the mix and I'm really into it, it usually just mixes itself and I'm like, I'm dead happy with that and I'll fire it off to the client when I'm done. Sometimes it doesn't come easy. Sometimes the mix is a little bit harder and I'm pushing things around and it's just not gelling. And then I maybe get it to a place where I'm like, I'm happy with the mix, but it maybe needs another 10%. I'm going to stop and I'm going to send it to the client and go, how am I doing? So it's not finished. I've admitted it's not finished, but how am I doing? Am I going in the right direction? So that is dependent, whichever one that is. If the guy's like, I'm like 90% there, what do you think? Then you deal with that. You go, yeah, I like what you're doing there, but the guitars are a bit heavy. Can you back them off a little bit? Or that snare drum's not punchy enough. Then you can deal with that. But if the guy's like, I'm done, this is my best mix, here we go. So number one, once you've got that mix, is ensure that the main thing, i.e. the melody or the main focus of the emotional content of the song, has been held as the most important thing in the mix from start to finish. That's the point in music. The emotional content, whether that's a guitar solo, a vocal, a lead instrument, the main focus, the main narrative is the most important thing in a mix from start to finish. If you don't have that, it's not right, I would say, generally. In fact, I would say all the time. And that even goes for a drum beat, because in some music, the drum beat is the main bit. There could be a drum solo. That's the main focus of emotional content. Or a bass solo.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't matter. There has to be a thing to draw your attention. Otherwise, it's just bland. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think like your mix needs to have. Well, I think it's like with any song. If your song starts at like and ends in and there's no change whatsoever, it's just like the entire way through. You know that and it's like 5 minutes long. Maybe stop and consider looking at some power violence or something, because they've got it right. It's for about 30 seconds and then there you go, that's the song done. But yeah, no, you need to think about that. You need to have some kind of like journey, apex, like high point in your song. And you're right, it could be some or whatever, some kind of change. So yeah, it could be a bass solo or it could be for sure.
I think what I meant was like, if you were to pause the track at any point there and play it, like just drag the cursor along to 1 minute 42, whatever is happening right there needs to be a focal attention on something, whether it's a lead vocal, a keyboard solo. That's what I mean. There has to be something there to grab you. And if it gets to a passage where, say it's just a drum kit and bass guitar playing and they're playing a little groove together, even then there's got to be something to grab you. For sure. Like there, and either needs to be like the emphasis is on like look at what the bass line is doing in tandem with the drums, or both.
Or if the bass line is really simple, like look how groovy the drums are, or whatever. or like how powerful they are. Yeah, no, 100%.
It needs to pop
yeah,
out.
at each point, there always needs to be something. I suppose, yeah, like each time you go through a certain section, it needs to be a focal point or something that sort of, I suppose it's like the sort of like pyramid-y kind of idea, or like a Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a Christmas tree unless it has a little star
Exactly,
or fairy
yeah.
at the top. So it would no matter where you are in the song, you'd be able to see that
Yes.
that fairy, I guess, or the star or whatever.
It's like I mix a lot of stuff, but the most where that fact comes into play the most is when I'm mixing our own music, because the main focus of attention in an Eriska song changes from bar to bar. It's never one thing for any more than 30 seconds. It's It's like it's drums. This is the main focus, and then it's bass, and then it's fiddle, then it's bagpipes, and it just it changes constantly. There's no like lead vocalist in the band, so it's never. It's constantly shifting, and I constantly have to think, where's the main focus of attention? Where do I want listeners to focus their attention? And see if I forget to do that, and I'm listening back, I go, oh crap, the whistle, which is supposed to be the main focus of attention, is not popping out of this mix. It's fizzling away in the background, and all I can hear is big, long, draggy chords from an accordion. That's not interesting. I'm not emphasizing the most important part of the mix. That is the number one most important thing to listen to when listening to a mix, is where is the emotional main focus, and has it been brought out enough? That I think that is what music is music is just human emotion in an art form, in the form of vibrating sound, vibrating waves.
If you want to get really sort of like clinical and scientific about it, yeah, it's just vibrations through air.
Yes, it is, and
it's particles hitting,
and some particles of air hitting have more emotional content in them than others. And it's about maximizing that emotional content. That is what makes a good mix. See, for example, Motown records. Some of those Motown records are some of the best emotionally driven, the most amazing sounding records ever made. And they sound like crap. The drums are tinny garbage. The guitars are washy. The vocals sound echoey, like they were recorded in a tin can. The quality is dreadful, but the performance, the emotion, the character, the vibe is second to none. It's the best ever. Because it's not really about the quality, it's about the emotional content. It's the same when you listen to an old Glenn Miller record from the 1940s. It sounds like garbage, but the emotional musical quality is just so deep.
Or like if you're a fan of the Ramones, like every single Ramone track is just like like the playing's very haphazard, but the fact that it's very haphazard is very fun. And the whole sound of it just feels like it just sounds like a good time. So it's the same idea there as well. Like I'm trying to think of other I'm trying to think of albums that sound like garbage that I really like. There is an album there's a Scottish band. They released 2 EPs. It's a really interesting band. It's a guitar, like an old
lap steel.
No, a keyboard. I don't know which one it is, but it's some kind of like crazy, like filthy sounding like organ, and drums, and it's like, and the organ's all distorted and stuff, and it's like the most like fast, like really screamy, distorted, shouty vocals. It's bizarre, really bizarre. The band's called Galoshians. You should check them out if you get a chance. I think their stuff's just on Bandcamp, but thinking about it, like like the sound of everything there isn't totally the best, but it's all about the emotional content. So like the energy is there, you feel hyped and you're like so it's the same idea.
Yeah, is it the good comparison? I just thought of kind of similar vibe. My Girl, right? That's an old Motown record. My Girl it's absolutely like, it's such a great song. Whether you like it or not, if you've heard it to death in weddings,
whether you've played it a million times in a wedding.
My
band,
Girl is
song.
An absolute classic. Just the emotional content of it, the harmonies, just the orchestration, everything. It sounds great. And a similar kind of vibe song would be like Ed Sheeran's Thinking Out Loud. When you listen to Ed Sheeran's and you hear his guitar and you've got headphones in and you close your eyes, the guitar could be in the same room as you. It's so high definition, so well recorded. It's as if the amp is literally just over there and Ed Sheeran standing in front of you. It's so high quality. And then you listen to My Girl and it's an infinitely better song, an infinitely worse recording. But it just, the focus, the attention, the emotion comes right out because the mix was there. The quality might not have been there, but the focus of attention was there. People get hung up on quality of sound too much, and they don't focus on the emotional content or attention.
Yeah.
They focus so much on the nitty gritty details that that's the stuff that doesn't matter. So, I'll kind of leave that there, but that's kind of the point I wanted to make was, and metal musicians are famous for this, absolutely notorious, awful.
Yeah, metal musicians don't even record with amps anymore. It's all like,
it's all
let me just plug my guitar into my
laptop.
Into my laptop. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. I can't listen to anything over like minus 30 decibels.
Metal has changed in the last 20 years. It used to be kind of, metal kind of came out of punk a little bit. It was kind of like really loud, scrappy, hard, heavy, loud rock, and then it became more surgical.
It came out of rock and roll. What kind of happened was it's almost like this one river split into like two streams. So like one stream kind of took it one way where they were. A little bit of music history for you. With punk music, the kind of idea was that in the 70s, a lot of music was becoming very mass-produced and wasn't saying anything. It was just becoming a bit, kitsch and beige.
Yeah.
So that's why you got bands like the Sex Pistols and stuff being like, we don't know how to play our instruments properly. We even fired our bass player because he was too good, and we got this guy called Sid Vicious who's infinitely worse. Like honestly, he couldn't really play. There's a story of him where I think he like did a bunch of speed, stayed up all night, and played through a Ramones album, played through it and worked it all out. And I don't know if you guys have bass players out there have like learnt Ramones songs. Very good for practicing your downstrokes with a pick, but it's about it. Like notes wise, not very engaging. But So anyway, so that's what punk kind of did, and then you had bands like the theory is that metal kind of came out with like bands like Led Zeppelin.
People say that the first
Black Sabbath and
the first ever metal
like
song
that.
was Helter Skelter by
You
the
Really
Beatles.
Got Me? All right. Oh, different answers.
Yeah, it's debated because if you listen to Helter Skelter, it just sounds like Led Zeppelin.
Yes. Yeah, you're right, because it's got that really, really heavy, really nasty sounding guitar, and You Really Got Me.
You Really Got Me, that's definitely there as well.
Yeah, that's the other one. They actually put razor blades.
That's right.
In an amp speaker. So
Slashed it up.
there you go. But yeah, so it's funny, like they with bands like Led Zeppelin and that. So it was more about like guitar,
It was dirty.
like musical virtuosity and stuff like that, you know. And there was a whole sort of like culture behind it, you know.
Yep.
Just a lot of like very like sort of occulty, pagany stuff going on, especially in Norway and stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
But early on, like,
but
it can in the 80s,
early
it
on.
exploded in the 80s, and you got like
yeah,
Metallica and these huge, massive names,
Yeah.
Iron Maiden,
and like glam metal bands that we don't speak of.
that's right, yeah. But it used to be
The
basically
dark
just it's just basically it was blues oriented rock and roll played really heavily, really loud, and it was really dirty. Whereas now metal is extremely clean. It's so precise. It's like if a surgeon or a advanced brain surgeon was to write music, it would sound like metal. It's super absolutely quantized to the grid. It's just
Certainly
so clinical.
with like, especially with things like Gent and stuff, you still get your stoner, your metal bands and your doom metal bands and the like that are a bit have taken up the mantle of like, let's just be loud and rowdy kind of a thing. But you're right, it's that, and everybody has like, you know, a guitar with more strings that you can count on your hands, you know, on your fingers.
That was a big digression.
It was, but it was fun.
So I think my main point was the focus, the sort of new metal types focus far too much on, you know, absolute surgical precision of each and every instrument. It's absolutely drilled into the minute detail of every single thing.
If you're a metal musician, please feel free to challenge us.
It depends. Obviously, genre dependent, but I'm generalizing here.
For sure.
Any sort of metal, you know the metal I'm talking about. It's the stuff that's like each kick drum sounds like it came out of a machine. It's not played by human beings. I mean, there are some human beings can do amazing things, but you can always tell it's a human being. It's all sampled drums. It's all, you know, canned tones that come out of an amp sim, and
all the guitars sound the same.
Yeah,
it's like the exact same like distortion.
So it was a long roundabout way of saying people have lost touch with the sort of emotional content, and they're
the humanity,
focusing on the sound more than anything else. Anyway, moving on. Yeah. So you've got your mix back from your mix engineer, mastering engineer, and you want to get feedback. So number one, make sure that the melody or the main focus of the emotional content has been held as the most important thing throughout the mix. Number two, listen on multiple devices and sound systems. Do not reply back to your engineer with comments about bass instruments sounding weak if you have only listened on some crappy laptop speakers. Because they don't produce bass.
Yeah. Listen to your mix on absolutely everything. Like earbuds like this, absolute like crap. Like, although these ones, to be honest, in my opinion, aren't too bad. But like, you get the idea. Right? Yeah. Stuff like this. Headphones, like kind of what I'm using now. Your phone speaker,
your fridge,
your car,
your microwave.
If you've got a smart fridge, listen to it on your smart fridge.
Your PS4 controller.
I mean, if it's possible, I don't know how possible it is, but like if you got one of the Alexas that like not the ones with like the nice speakers, but like one of the crappy, like listen to it through that.
Yes,
you can really tell like a good mix from you know, like in my opinion, I feel like you can tell you're onto a good mix even if you're listening to it through your phone, which doesn't produce bass, right? But you can still identify that the bass is there.
Yes,
right?
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
You're onto a winner.
Yeah. Yep.
In my opinion.
If there's a question that your engineer should ask, if you come back and go, oh, I can't hear the bass, and he goes, what are you listening on? And you go, my 17-year-old laptop speakers. And he goes, they don't really produce bass or reproduce the kind of bass that you want to hear. However, when you listen to other songs that you like on those speakers, can you hear bass? And if the answer is no, then stop using those speakers. If the answer is, yeah, I can kind of hear the bass in other songs, then there's a problem with the mix. I'll give you an example of this. I was mixing a record for a duo called Figgins Garden. It's a kind of folk group, Scott Figgins and Scott Garden. Scott Figgins is the piper in Eriska. And I was mixing one of his or their tracks, and they had a stomp box, which is like a little piece of wood with a pickup that you stamp along and it makes a bass sound.
Yeah.
And one of the Scots got back to me saying, I can't hear it. It's not loud enough. And I was like, oh, wow. Because in my control room with my 2.1, system, big subwoofer, I'm like, this is absolutely banging. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. He's like, oh, I can't hear it. And I'm like, what are you listening to it on? And he's listening to it on this, one of those, it looks like an Alexa, but it's like one of those desktop speakers, Bluetooth desktop speakers for like 20 quid. It sounds like trash, but it's handy for bits and bobs, if you're listening to music in the house or whatever. And it produces virtually no bass. And I was like, well, let me hear the thing. So I went over to his house and I listened to the mix on the thing. And he was right. Like, I all I could hear was a wee. And I was like, that's just not good enough. And I was listening to, I said, put on other mixes, and sure enough, there was other mixes that had similar stomp box sounds, and I could hear it much better and clearer. So I was like, I had a problem with the mix, so I had to go back to the studio and remix it. So sometimes that can happen. If like I'm mixing on
Tis a thing.
really expensive, nice Adam monitors, there's a company called Adam that make really good studio monitors. I also have a set of crappy M Audio £100 speakers that aren't even mounted on proper soundproof mounts. They're just sitting on my desk. They sound like garbage, but if I can make a mix sound half decent on them, then the chances are it'll sound good on anything else. So that's why you need to listen in your car, on your laptop, on your phone, just everything you can get your hands on, because it's useful information for the engineer, because the engineer could be wrong, like I was.
Yep.
So provide some useful feedback to your engineer regarding frequencies. So here are some of the things you can say to your engineer. So you can provide information like, oh, the song sounds quite muffled in my car compared to other songs, or it sounds quite tinny in my headphones, but it sounds fine on my hi-fi system. See, music will probably sound fine on any hi-fi system, because the studio is as hi-fi as you can get. They're hearing an accurate representation of all the frequencies from bottom to top. They might not hear what it will sound like on the crappiest speakers out there, because the crappiest speaker out there might exaggerate certain frequencies, like 600 hertz. 600 hertz, for anyone who doesn't know, is the frequency that sounds like cardboard boxes. It's like a woody room, horrible sound. That's the frequency you usually scoop out of stuff, like bass drums and toms and stuff, because it just sounds like a room. It sounds like a cardboard box. It's like cornflakes. It's horrible. It's a weird way of describing things. So if you can provide that feedback, if you say, right, it sounds really tinny and has this horrible tinny sound, then they will know, right, okay, there's something going on in the high frequencies, and it's only happening on headphones or those little Apple iPod things. Everyone's got a set of them. I'll maybe fire that into my interface, because I've got a set of, here they are here for the camera people. Ta-da! Some really old iPhone headphones, and I can just plug them in with a big jack into my expensive system and mix on those headphones. I'll maybe listen a pass on those crappy headphones and go, oh, this sounds quite good, sounds decent. And I'm happy with it. If I don't do that, when I'm listening to it later on, I can hear this spike. So it's like an increase in volume at a certain frequency that's just so jarring. It's like, and it's too late. You've missed it. Your client hasn't noticed. Some rooms as well, like the room I mix in, I've gotten to used to the sound of this room. So around about 120 hertz, there's a little bump in this room just because of the shape and size of it. 120 hertz is quite loud in this room, which means I'm always over adjusting round about that frequency. So I always have to make sure I'm not over adjusting because it might sound really horrible in someone else's system. So I might be cutting bass out when I don't need to because my room sounds really bassy. I'm constantly cutting bass, but I could actually be destroying my mix. So provide all of this frequency information back to your engineer. This is secondary. This is secondary to the actual content of the song, the emotional content. The frequencies popping, the weird harshness in the high-end frequencies or the big bumbly, all that stuff is not as important as the emotional content of the song. Always remember that. It's song first. It's the vocals first. It's the character first before all the other nonsense.
Yep.
So last kind of point is to not lose sight of what is important and not being able to feel the emotional content in a lead vocal because of poor mixing is a highly important thing to pick up on. Not being able to clearly hear the modulated delay on a fourth guitar layer in the bridge whilst the guitar solo is playing is not important. Stop wasting time nitpicking on unimportant things, as this will lead to self-sabotage.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the previous thing I think we talked about in the last episode of like finding things, picking things, to critique that, for the reason of picking the thing, that was so eloquently put, Julian. Finding the thing. At points you can tell that I am not. In some ways, I am not a native speaker of the language because I just break down. Anyway,
it's fine.
But yeah, don't find things to poke at for the reason of finding things to poke at. Because that's not going to get you anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
If you're generally pretty happy, that's probably good.
Mm-hmm.
Just take a bit of time, and really think about what you're going to say to your engineer or whatever, rather than sort of like thinking that I need to come up with something straight away and blah 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 blah, and then you're like high pass, low pass filter, blah 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 blah, and then you're just like spitting garbage, and your engineer's gonna look at it and go, okay, cool.
Yeah, like 90% of the job is trying to decode and translate what the client's trying to tell you.
Be plain.
It sounds like crisps. I've had that. It sounds like crisps. I'm like, crisps. What? Crisps. What do you? Was that like 10,000 hertz? I don't know what crisps is. Can you explain what crisps mean?
Oh my god.
Or
crisps.
It's a bit too chuggy. It's a bit too sussy. It's a bit too. You've had all this.
Oh, whoever's listening to this, if they do listen to it regularly, they know. You know who you are. Could you play this a little bit more sussy, please?
Yeah.
Could you make it a bit more chuggy, please?
Some of the adjectives people come away with is just gold. I should write a book on just quotes from musicians.
You should. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So to get around this, actually, I use a software which is kind of new and kind of cool called Filepass. All engineers should use it. If you're an engineer, recording engineer, recording producer, mixer, masterer, and you're sending files to clients to get their feedback, use Filepass. Filepass is a website that you can sign up for, and upload your mix to it, send a link to the client, they get access to it, the waveform, they can download it, but you can like not let them download if they haven't paid their bills or whatever. And they can stream it at full quality. There's no compression or anything, file compression, full wave files, and they can zoom into the waveforms and they can put a little pin, a time-stamped pin at specific moments in the song, and they can add in comments on the bass here sounds woofy, and they can add all their adjectives in, and this saves hundreds of time and hundreds of emails, loads of time and loads of emails. And you can talk, you can have there's a chat option, you can chat and reply to the engineer on this website. And rather than going on Dropbox, your engineer sends you on WeTransfer or horrible, or Dropbox or OneDrive, and then you're like, at 1 minute 42 it does this, and then you're like, okay, where does that, like, okay. And then you're emailing back and like, where? I don't know. And it takes ages and ages and ages. If you're in the process of recording and you're working with an engineer and they don't have this, be a nice person and say, hey, check this out. I heard this on a podcast and it's great. Other engineers are using it. It's like revolutionary. And it would be really cool, me as a client, to get this kind of feedback. Would you consider using this software for me, please? Because since I've started using it, I'm like, it saved me a bunch of time. It's absolutely great. And the clients like it as well because it's so fast. It's such a fast process. And because you can go, there's a problem right there. And then there's a little marker. It's like, it's great. No wasting time on unimportant things, which leads to self-sabotage. Because if you start pointing out things that don't matter, and your engineer is like, I don't think this is a problem, blah blah blah. I'll do the change anyway, but I'll get back to you, and they send you the mix, and then you're like, I don't know, maybe just put it back, and then you're like a month down the line, you've got seven versions of a file in, and it's like, this thing's not getting released anytime soon, and it sounds totally different from mix one, and it's like, just wasted all this time. If we can speed up that process between the communication between the artist and the engineer, that'd be a great thing. So I highly recommend Filepass. I don't know how much it is at the moment if you're an engineer listening, but it's like, I think it's like 15 quid a month or something, maybe more. But if you're working on something and you're either an engineer or working with an engineer, I highly recommend using it.
Cool.
For that kind of thing.
Nice.
So that's pretty much this topic wrapped up. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we sign off?
Don't think so. No. That was a fun tangent we had about
metal.
Rock music history. I guess if you want us to talk about that, or whatever, I don't know, might be fun. Look at bands in the past. What did they do? What could they have done? What if they had listened to a podcast? What would they have done differently?
What will happen if you don't listen to this podcast? The podcast that describes what will happen if you don't listen to this podcast. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know.
Deep, man.
I don't know, man. I think we more or less covered it. Obviously, if you have any questions, please don't be shy.
Yeah.
Send us a message.
Definitely. And any subjects you want us to cover, let us know. Because we're always open. We're 42 episodes in and managing to still come up with things to talk about, which is kind of miraculous. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, once we can actually gig, and then we'll have some proper things to talk about.
Well, yeah, trying to keep pumping out episodes, which is relevant to the current times, because no one's actually making music. But this stuff will all be relevant at any point in time, I would say. I've said this, I think I said this last week. If you're only listening to 1 or 2 episodes here or there, I highly recommend, if you're doing the band thing, go back to episode 1 and just blast through them all. There's only 42.
Yep.
I highly recommend it because there's a lot of good stuff in there, and a lot of cats as well, if you like cats. Anyway, so
unfortunately, yes, there are quite a lot of cats.
We'll wrap it up there, and we'll try and think of something nice to talk about next week. If you follow us on social media, please give us a wee like and a share if possible. And if you're watching on YouTube, a like and a subscribe would be nice as well. And if you've got any pals that are in bands, just recommend the podcast. That'd be really cool. That really helps as well. Word of mouth is such a good thing. And if you go on to www.levelupurband.com, you can sign up for free and get some free downloadable PDFs on our recommended affordable gear for musicians, and a couple of worksheets. There's going to be more on some music theory basics. We've got some more in the pipeline for worksheets, and we'll just keep adding them as time goes on. But it's all free and just kind of touches on some things we talk about in the podcast all the time. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So I hope you enjoyed the episode and hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Right. Bye.